Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's Word Study. Matthew chapter 13:35 quotes from Psalm 78:2, saying, "I will speak in parables and utter things hidden since the creation of the world." I will speak in parables. There are 7 parables in Matthew chapter 13, all revealing mysteries or secrets, pointing at things which had been hidden from the eyes, ears, and hearts of everyone until Yeshua spoke them nearly 2,000 years ago. Today we're going to talk about the parable of the sower. That's from Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 23. Now, we're not going to do an audio study today because all the key words throughout the parable of the sower are so simple and basic in their definitions that we don't need to dig in on those things. You'll see as we go along. Now I'm going to read verses 1 through 23 in chapter 13 of Matthew. That is Matith Yahu. And I'm not going to be reading from any particular version. I'm going to be expounding as much as I can on the original Aramaic to bring as much clarity as I can to the verses in English. So we begin with verse 1 saying, Yeshua went out of the house and was sitting beside the sea. But such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and remained sitting there, while all the crowd stood on the shore. And he told them many things in parables, stories by way of illustration and comparison, saying, a sower went out to sow, meaning to sow seeds. And as he sowed, some seeds fell by the roadside, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they had not much soil, and at once they sprang up, because they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they dried up and withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them out. Some other seeds fell on good soil and yielded a crop, some 100 times as much as was sown, some 60 times as much, and some 30 times as much as was sown. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Let him consider, perceive, and comprehend. Then the Talmudim, disciples, came to him and said, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And he replied to them, "To you it has been given to know the secrets and mysteries," that is, the things that have been hidden throughout all of history from the understanding of people until now. To you it has been given to know these secrets and mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. I'm going to talk about that. But to them it has not been given. Continuing, for whoever possesses spiritual knowledge, to him will more be given, and he will be furnished richly, so that he will have abundance of spiritual knowledge. But from him who does not possess spiritual knowledge, even what he possesses will be taken away from him. This is the reason that I speak to them in parables. Because having the power of seeing, they do not see, and having the power of hearing, they do not hear, nor do they grasp or understand. In them indeed is the process of the fulfillment of the nevuah of Yeshayahu, the prophecy of Isaiah, which says, hearing you shall indeed hear, but by no means will you ever grasp or understand. And seeing you shall indeed see, but by no means will you ever perceive, discern, or realize. For this nation's heart, you might say because this nation's heart has grown thick, fat and dull, and their ears heavy and hard of hearing. And their eyes they have tightly closed, lest they see and perceive with their eyes, hear and comprehend with their ears, lest they should grasp and understand with their heart. Notice that we see with our eyes, hear with our ears, understand with our heart. He says, lest they do that, and turn back and have me heal them. But Baruch, blessed, happy, fortunate, and to be envied, are your eyes because they do see, and your ears because they do hear. Truly, I tell you, many Nevi'im, prophets, and righteous ones, those who were upright and in right standing with Elohim, longed to see what you see and did not see it. They longed to hear what you hear and did not hear it. Listen then and hear the meaning of the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the Malchut, the kingdom, and does not grasp and comprehend it, the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the roadside. As for what was sown on the thin, rocky soil, this is he who hears the word and at once welcomes and accepts it with joy. Yet it has no real root in him, but is temporary, erratic, inconsistent, unstable. It lasts but a short time, and when affliction, trouble, or persecution comes on account of the word, at once he is caused to stumble. He's repelled and begins to distrust and desert Elohim, whom he ought to trust and obey, and he falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is he who hears the word, but the cares of this world, the pleasure and delight and glamour and deceitfulness of riches, choke and suffocate the word, and it yields no fruit. As for what was sown on good soil, this is he who hears the word, and grasps and comprehends it, who indeed bears fruit, and yields in one case 100 times as much as was sown, in another case 60 times as much, and in another case 30 times as much as was sown. Now, let's recap a few things. Yeshua says, in verse 3, a sower went out to sow. The sower is Yeshua. In verse 4, he says, and as he sowed, some seeds fell by the roadside, and the birds came and ate them up. The seeds represent the word. And the birds represent Satan and his minions. Yeshua explains this and the seeds sown along the roadside in verse 19, saying, when anyone hears the word of the Malchut, the kingdom, and does not grasp and comprehend it, the wicked one, Satan and his minions, come and snatch away what was sown in that person's heart. Yeshua says this is what was sown along the roadside. In verse 5, he says, other seeds fell on rocky ground where they had not much soil. And at once they sprang up because they had no depth of soil. And there are 4 types of soil. We have the roadside, covered that one. We have the rocky soil. Then we have the thorny soil. And finally we have the good soil. Now, Yeshua further explains the thin, rocky soil in verses 20 and 21, saying, as for what was sown on the thin, rocky soil, this is he who hears the word and at once welcomes and accepts it with joy. Yet it has no real root in him, but it's temporary. It's erratic. It's inconsistent, unstable. It lasts just a short time, and when affliction, trouble, or persecution comes, on account of the word, at once he's caused to stumble. He's repelled, begins to distrust and desert Elohim, whom he ought to trust and obey, and he falls away. In verse 7, he says, other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them out. Thorns represent the things of this world. Yeshua explains this in verse 22, saying, as for what was sown among thorns, this is he who hears the word, but the cares of this world, the pleasure, the delight, and the glamour, and deceitfulness of riches, thorns, choke and suffocate the word, and it yields no fruit. Other seeds fell on good soil and yielded a crop, some 100 times as much as was sown, some 60 times as much, and some 30 times as much. Yeshua explains in verse 23, saying, as for what was sown on the good soil, this is he who hears the word and grasps it, comprehends it, and he who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100 times as much as was sown, in another case 60 times as much, and in another case 30 times as much as was sown. Then Yeshua goes on to say, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Let him consider, perceive, comprehend, meditate, think about. I have a video titled, Faith Comes by Hearing, which talks about hearing. And you'll see a link to it in the More Info section beneath this video. If you haven't watched that, I encourage you, go there after this and click on that link and watch that video. In verse 10 and 11 we see, then the Talmidim, his disciples, came to him and said, why do you speak to them in parables? And he replied to them, saying, to you it's been given to know the secrets and mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven. But to them it has not been given. And Yeshua explains this in verses 13 through 16, saying, I speak to them in parables because they have the power to see and they don't. They have the power to hear, but they don't. Nor do they grasp or understand, because their heart has grown thick fat and dull. Their ears have grown heavy and hard of hearing, and their eyes, they've got them tightly closed, lest they see and perceive with their eyes, hear and comprehend with their ears, lest they should grasp and understand with their heart and turn back and have me heal them. It's almost like he's saying, they don't want to be healed. They're afraid of understanding and grasping and having to change their ways. They're afraid of letting go of the things of the world. They don't want to let go of that, you know. Anyway, this bit about the kingdom of heaven. Matthew, Matith Yahu, is the only book that speaks of the kingdom of heaven, that is, the Malchut of the Shamayim. Mentions it 33 times. Whereas all the other Gospels speak only of the kingdom of Elohim, that is, the Malchut of Elohim, mentioned only 5 times. So there's a difference between the Malchut of the Shamayim, the kingdom of heaven, and the Malchut of Elohim, the kingdom of Elohim. There's a difference. The kingdom of heaven, that is the Malchut of the Shamayim, is a physical realm and is part of the Malchut of Elohim. The kingdom of heaven is a part of the kingdom of Elohim. Daniel chapter 2 verse 44 speaks of the kingdom of heaven, the Malchut of the Shamayim, and the 1,000-year millennium on earth, saying, the Elah of the Shamayim shall appoint a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, nor shall its sovereignty be left to any other people. It shall break and crush and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. In verse 12, Yeshua says, for whoever possesses spiritual knowledge, knowledge from his Ruach, his spirit, to him more will be given, and he will be furnished richly, so that he will have abundance. But from him who does not possess spiritual knowledge, even what he possesses will be taken away from him. Now again, these 7 parables of Matthew 13 are Yeshua's teachings, which reveal knowledge about the secrets and the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, the Malchut of the Shamayim, the physical part of the Malchut of Elohim, which we will see manifested during the 1,000-year millennium. So once again, the sower of the seeds is Yeshua, the Word. The Word of Abba Father Yahweh is Yeshua. And, this book that we study that we call the Bible. And as he sowed, some seeds fell by the roadside, and birds came and ate them up. In other words, some seeds from the word Yeshua, or, people who study Abba Father's word, they're on the roadside, and they're just immediately surrounded by Satan and his minions, and those seeds are just snatched up. They don't last very long. They don't comprehend or understand, and Satan and his minions come and they just snatch it away. Those are the seeds on the roadside. Now, other seeds fell on rocky ground, where there's not much soil. In this case, the soil is referring to the seeds being able to take root. These are people who they don't have deep roots in their studies or in their relationship with Elohim yet. And they hear the word, they get excited about it, but because there's no roots developed, it's a very temporary excitement, or it's inconsistent, it's unstable. It just lasts a short time, and then when Satan and his minions, test them with any kind of troubles or tribulation or persecution regarding the word, specific word that they have fallen in love with, they stumble, they're repelled, they begin to distrust and desert Elohim, thinking, how can he love me if he lets this happen to me? And they blame him, and I knew someone once a long time ago. His brother died in his 20s, and this friend of mine, because of that, he got angry with Elohim, and for years and years and years after that, for the rest of his life, he recently passed away, he said, "I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God." He's angry, God let my brother die, that's it, I'm not playing with him anymore, he's not my friend, I'm an atheist. And I always used to laugh at him and say, if you really were an atheist, you wouldn't talk so much about God. I mean, how can you talk about something that you say doesn't exist? I mean, if something doesn't exist, you don't talk about it. Why would you talk about something that doesn't exist? I would always stop him in his tracks. But anyway, that type, they something happens and then they distrust and desert Elohim, whom they ought to trust and obey, especially during times of testing, temptation, or trials and tribulations. Then we have seeds that were sown by the word Yeshua, or through the word that we read, and they fell among thorns. Now, thorns are things of the world. Now, this can get a bit complicated. I mean, things of the world could be a lot of different things. It could be money, possessions, greed, lust, lust over all kinds of things. It can also be religion, doctrines of men that choke out the truth. A lot of people, a good example would be the name Jesus. I mean, pretty much all of us grew up thinking of our Messiah as this guy named Jesus. Now we come to find out that's not only not his name, but it also lifts up a false god, Zeus, Jesus. And there's a thorn, that's a thing of the world. His name is Jesus, I don't want to change. People are afraid to break out of the box. They get comfortable with, I understand the word to mean this, I understand his name to be that, and don't go changing things on me. Those are thorns, things of the world, doctrines of men. His name was never Jesus. His name was never Jesus. He's a Jew. He has a Jew's name, Yeshua. Uh, and, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. What name? Jehovah? Please. That name was concocted by a Catholic monk in the 1400s. The letter J didn't even appear in the world until the 1600s. So that was Yehovah. And Yah, of course, is the Father's short name, of the short version of the Father's name. Hova means chaos, ruin, destruction, and mischief. So when you say Jehovah, you're saying that Abba Father is chaos, ruin, destruction, and mischief. Another way of saying that would be Abba Father, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is Satan. These are thorns that choke out the truth. This is why, I bring us to Kadam, back to the beginning, the Odiot, those original letter forms and the meanings of them, the original language of Abba Father, Yahweh, and his Son, Yeshua, and his indwelling Ruach HaKodesh. Because the more we use his words and the names that he gave to others, the more revelation we receive. His language is anointed, and these other things are thorns. They choke out the truth. So, the seeds that fell among the thorns, those are that represents people who hear the word, but these things of the world choke and suffocate the truth, and the word that was, or the seed that was planted in them, yields no fruit. Then we have the seeds that fell on good soil. They yielded a crop. Now, some 100 times as much as was sown. Some 60, some 30 times as much. So, there's this other thing of like, I see people tending to think that all believers in Yeshua and all believers in Elohim are equal. They all get the same benefits. All believers get raptured. All believers are the bride. No, not so. The Malchut of Elohim, the kingdom of Elohim, is one of hierarchy. Michael, the archangel, he's in charge of all the angels. They're not all equal with him. Yeshua, the bane of Yahweh, everything is at his feet. Nothing's equal with him. The word says that Abba Father is going to make certain ones known as B'nai Elohim equal with him and Yeshua and the Ruach HaKodesh. That doesn't mean that they're doesn't mean they're equal any more than, Yeshua says, I and the Father are one, and everybody go, oh, he is the Father, No, that's not what he's saying. Or, if certain ones are going to be made one with the Father and the Son and the Ruach, that doesn't mean that, they are the Father or that they have his standing or, there's different levels of hierarchy. Some are chosen by the Father as a gift for his Son. Some are going to be B'nai Elohim. And in 1 John, it tells us that the B'nai Elohim, regarding them, what they will be has not yet been made known. Nobody knows. Abba Father Yahweh has not revealed what they are going to be. And then, there are those who are taken up in the Nechatef, the rapture. And we see in Philippians that there are those who are taken out of that group that is raptured. Is that the bride, or maybe that's the bride and the wedding party, and then that gets broken up. Here's the bride, here's the wedding party. There are different levels, and this is what Yeshua is saying here. He plants seeds, and there are some who receive the word and yield 100 times. There are some that don't yield 100 times. They yield 60 times. There's some that yield 30 times. There's some that yield 10 times. Yahweh doesn't make puppets. He doesn't make little toy soldiers. Yahweh hates bricks. He likes natural stones. They're all different. So this seed that's grown on the good soil, where, there are those that yield fruit, some this much, some that much, some that much, and some that much. Let's talk about those who hear the word, they grab it, they understand it, and they bear fruit. Yeshua says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. If you have ears to hear, it's only because he has opened up your hearing. Click on that link you see underneath this video that says faith comes by hearing. And I break that scripture up, and we do an audio study, and you'll see what it means to have hearing. Check that out. And then, finally, again, he speaks in parables because only those who have been given hearing by Elohim will understand it, and that's the way he wants it. There are some he doesn't want them to understand because they don't have a heart for him. Abba, Father, Yahweh searches the earth to and fro constantly, looking to see if anyone has a heart for him. And the difference between the kingdom of heaven, Malchut of the Shamayim, and the kingdom of Elohim. The kingdom of heaven, again, is a physical realm. It's part of Elohim's kingdom. And it's a physical realm. It's something we will see during the millennial period. After the tribulation, after Satan is locked up, there's 1,000 years, no darkness, no Satan or any of his minions. This is the Malchut of the Shamayim. This is the kingdom of heaven on earth. And there's another little thing we need to get out of our heads. People think of heaven as this one singular place. Well, I want to go to heaven. So if you mention the kingdom of heaven, they think, oh, that's the kingdom of heaven. Throughout the entire word, from Genesis through Revelation, in the original language, there is no word anywhere that speaks of heaven. Singular doesn't exist. That word in the original language would be shemach. We never see that word anywhere. It's always shamayim, heavens, plural. So the kingdom of the heavens is what we see in the millennium. It's a physical realm. It's a part of the kingdom of Elohim. And, there are those, I talk about this in my study of Revelation. There are those who are earth dwellers, and there are those who are heaven dwellers. Those who are taken up in the Nechatef, they are heaven dwellers. They dwell up in the Kodesh city of Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, above the earth. There are those who are earth dwellers. They go through the tribulation. they are believers, but they go through the tribulation, and they're in the millennial period, and they live on the earth. They do not have homes in the higher Shamayim. Their homes are in the physical Malchut of the Shamayim. It's a lot to chew on, I know, my friends, but that's our study for this week. And as always, I hope and I pray that this study is a beracha to you and yours. And Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, shalom, my friends. Yeah. Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.